Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on how to start a natural hair care brand. My name is Afua Osei, and I'm a co-founder of She Leads Africa. Apologies for starting a bit late, but we're really excited to have Nibi Lawson with us, and she's the founder of Kinky Apothecary. Hello, Nibi, welcome.
Hi, Afua. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We're so excited to talk today about kind of a natural hair kind of as an industry and a business. I think everyone on the SLA team is natural, and we know how much money we spend on products. And I just felt like as young women, we were more so as consumers instead of creators, and actually taking advantage of this boom, this resurgence, and this interest, and by creating products that we can make money from, as well as look beautiful with. So I'm really excited to have Nibi here with us. And we're gonna how you can start a natural hair brand. The do's and the don'ts, what it takes to build a product line that actually makes sense for your customers, doing testing, development, and of course, we're gonna answer your questions. Definitely make sure that you join SheLeadsAfrica.org to your webinars, and also follow the Kinky Apothecary on all the social media platforms and visit their website, kinkyapothecary.com. So, Nibi, welcome, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you found yourself a natural hair entrepreneur?
Okay, well, I started off my careers actually I actually moved back. I was living in the UK. I lived in the States for a little bit. And I moved back to Nigeria and working in a finance company. But I'd been natural for several years before I moved, and I'd just been messing around with my hair, wasn't using any different products or anything. But then when I moved to Nigeria, I just realized that, another thing is I used to wear my hair blown out quite a lot when I was in the UK. And when I came to Nigeria, I realized that that wouldn't work with the humidity. It just would never stay straight. And just things that I'd been using in my hair didn't seem to work anymore. And I needed to start researching what I could do. And then that's when I started paying attention to my hair and products. And nothing that was recommended was available in Nigeria at the time. This was about 7 years ago when I first started looking into everything. And so I started... I'd have to travel to get my products, and then people were asking me about my hair and things like that, and I realized that there was a market and there was a gap, and people needed, not only did they need the products, they needed the advice. And so I started, it was really just as a hobby because I still had my full-time job. I was bringing back a number of products and selling them, having small workshops, and that's how it started off. And then a few years ago, developed it into a proper business.
We get a lot of, we hear a lot of stories like that. So you had a personal need, you had a struggle, and then you tried to solve it for yourself, and then you end up realizing it's a bigger problem, not just for your startup business. Now, Nibi, you mentioned that you first had a full-time job and you were just traveling back and forth. So one of the questions that we received from our community, let me see, was from Adenike. She wanted to know how, when you started it just as a hobby or something you were doing part-time, how did
you... Sorry, you've cut out there. Hello?
To support it. How did you manage those two, those two things?
Sorry, it cut out a little bit, so I didn't get all the thing. You said, how did I cope with rejection, basically?
Yeah, and then also just having both the business and your full-time job.
Okay. Well, that was difficult. I mean, my full-time job was very demanding, so it was really hard to have both. And a lot of things did slip, especially right at the beginning, even when, as a hobby, it was a one-man band, and I was... doing everything on my own. So a lot of things did slip through the net. I don't know if I'd recommend people start off the way I did. But then if you are starting something as a hobby, that there are ways to work around it. If your job isn't that demanding, and if you just prepared to put in the work, and then know that, for example, in an evening you're not going to go out, you're not going to watch TV, and you're going to be focusing because it's essentially your second job. And so that's what I had to eventually do. I knew that, for example, I couldn't have a phone number up as a way of people contacting me if I couldn't answer the phone all the time. So I focused more on communicating with people via email and through the blog. And so that's how I was able to balance it. In terms of rejection, I mean, that's a given. Even if you start off as a proper company, you're going to face rejection. It's just something that we go through, and you just have to persevere and just keep at it. And there were brands or companies that I contacted at the beginning who didn't even respond to emails and right away. And now we have a good working relationship. It just took time and just, trying, kept trying. And that's how I got through that.
So Nibi, can you help walk us through kind of how did you concept for the Kinky Apothecary? What gaps did you identify initially in the market? And, how did you really figure out, okay, what kind of products do I want to focus on? Do I not want to focus on? And really figuring out who your target customer is. Because whenever you're starting a new business, there are so many questions that you don't have the answers to. So how were you able to really focus and decide, this is what we will do, and this is what we'll do, and this is how we're going to, be a bit different in the market?
Okay, well, at the time, because bear in mind, again, this is 6 to 7 years ago, there wasn't really a market. So basically it was, the world of my oyster, essentially. So how I discovered there was a gap because I needed natural hair products and there weren't none. I went to all the stores at the time on the island. I think I went all over Koi, VI and stuff, and there was nothing. There was nowhere stocking any of the brands that had been recommended on the forums that I'd been reading about. Any of the brand names or any brands that had, any brands that didn't have mineral oil, sulfates, etc. There just wasn't anything. So it was the market was ripe, and I just knew. And also from the questions I was getting at the time, I just knew that there was that gap in the market. It was just obvious at the time. Now it's different because so many companies have now sprung up, and there's so many people doing so many different things, and it's really important to try and figure out how to differentiate yourself from all the others. My aim was to create a company that was a one-stop resource, so just anything that you wanted, education, a variety of products at a variety of prices, just to ensure that those things were all available in one place, and also just to bring in the expertise. Like, I'm obsessed with natural hair, and I especially was at that time. And I know, and I've done a lot of research. I really know about it. So for me, it was quite easy to inject that into a brand and to show people and to get people to understand that I knew what I was talking about when I was able to give the advice. So it's all about finding what your niche is, what your expertise is, and how you can convey that to to your potential customers.
So, when you were going through this customer development process, you saw a bunch of different customer styles. So, kind of, who are some customers that you decided you weren't going to serve? Right? Because of course you found the people you were going to work for. I mean, you were going to provide products, but was there anyone you said, you know what, they could be a customer, but not right now? And how did you make that determination on who you'd focus on initially when you were just starting out?
Well, when I was just starting out, it was, the focus was just on people like me, people with natural hair, people who at the time were doing the research online and trying to find people. I wasn't necessarily going after, just anyone. Like, now our market has expanded, so it's people like my mother's friends, or who don't necessarily find things through going online. But initially, our target market was young naturals who were at a loss, who didn't. I mean, who would go online and look for things, and that's how they would find us. And that was initial. Well, I didn't specifically decide not to target anybody. It was just that was who the natural market. That's what the market was at the time. I didn't specifically say, oh, I'm not targeting men, or I'm not targeting women over the age of 65. It's just it was just a natural occurrence that the people who were interested and who found our products just by doing searches online happened to be in the same kind of socioeconomic and age group as I was at the time.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is, by naturally kind of how you decided to design the company, certain customers kind of came to you, because I can imagine, because it was a storefront, you know, it had to be people who felt comfortable maybe with not seeing a product before buying it, or who were engaged on social media. So because of the way you designed the company, that meant that you were reaching some people, but you weren't necessarily reaching others at first.
Exactly. That's exactly what, that's exactly how it was. And also you have to remember that about 6 years ago in Nigeria, people weren't that confident with paying money for something and buying something online that they hadn't seen and they hadn't touched, which is why later on we identified the need to have the concessions where people could see the actual physical product, which I'll get to a bit later. But right at the beginning, yes, it was mainly people who had to put that trust in from seeing a product online and deciding to go for it.
Perfect. So can you tell us a little bit about your products, right? I think I'm natural and I feel like I need everything, just shampoo, conditioner, oils, creams, gels. But when you're first starting out, you can't do everything, right? You have to focus on. So can you talk to us a little bit about your research and development process? You know, what products did you decide to start with? And then how did you kind of, there's some science to it. You can't just wake up one day and just make something and assume that it's going to work. So how did you research the different products? How did you research what would work and what wouldn't work? And then how did you kind of figure out what recipes you were going to utilize, you know, for your business as your initial product set?
Okay, well, I have to clarify, first of all, what the Kinky Apothecary does. We don't make products, or we have one product that we make, but what we do is we retail a variety of brands. So we bring in things from the US, from the UK, and some Nigerian brands as well. And I've always, right from the beginning, I knew what I wanted, you know, what kind of brand I wanted to put across. It always wanted to be a brand that only associated with high quality brands as well. And I knew that I would only stock products that I believed in as well, because that would just make it easier for me to sell. If I believe in them, I can't sell a product that I don't know anything about. I don't really believe it works. So that was how I was able to select the brands I worked with. And that especially comes into play with a lot of Nigerian brands, because you sometimes you see a lot of brands, a lot of locally made products that are not necessarily up to scratch. They wouldn't necessarily stand up next to an American brand, for example, like on a shelf. And we wanted to work with products that were of that level. So so in terms of what we do and how we stock products, I work a lot when we work with the Nigerian brands, we work a lot to try and understand what their process is, and to just ensure you know, that they have processes in place that would stand up to an international brand. So there are a couple of Nigerian brands that we have. There are a lot more that we're working with and we're talking to about stocking. And just along this way, I've just been able to get an idea of what people need to, the kind of research that people need to do to be able to build their own brand, because they can't just get some shea butter, which is what you see happening once in a while. People get shea butter, mix it with a couple of things without having done the research, and put it just in a jar and try and sell it, and things like that. And not that, so I'm rambling a little bit, but they're not, in terms of developing a proper brand that will stand up to an international brand, you have to really put in the work, especially at the research and development stage. Sometimes people start products because they've identified there's something missing. For example, we're in Nigeria, everybody complains about the humidity and complains about shrinkage. For example, I haven't really seen a product that combats you know, shrinkage, or where you can get a great twist out and it's going to last all day in this humidity. So if somebody had realized that was an issue and did all the research, saw with the, for example, what ingredients would block out humidity, or what ingredients would be able to provide the best hold, and was able to devise that product and develop it, that they'd identified that gap and now wanted to devise a product that combats that issue. Sorry. So that is something that, a way that they'd be able to differentiate themselves. And in doing that, they would have to really research the market to see if, I mean, I know just from getting questions from our customers, I know that is something that's a gap. But whether that, for example, is the problem that you've identified, you research the market and ensure that there are enough people who would want to, who have that problem, who would buy that product if that miracle product came on the market. You need to understand the basic components of the ingredients that went into that product. So you know, for example, humidity is the issue with shrinkage. So you would look for ingredients that were not humectants, so ingredients that don't draw in the moisture to your hair. So because you're trying to battle that humidity, you would look at, for example, if you're making a conditioner, you'd need to understand that the basic components of that conditioner have to be water because it's moisture. So, for example, I've seen products marketed as conditioners that are just oil or shea butter. I know that if you're using that product, for example, with a steamer, that's going to work. But if you're just using it as a conditioner on its own, it's not going to be successful. And that way, it's not really going to work. And if a product doesn't work, it's not going to be that successful in terms of repeat sales. And so these are things that you just have to look into, understand your ingredients, understand what you want them to do, understand hair. So look into, do the research, understand how hair works, what hair needs, the different hair types. And I don't mean just like 4A, 4B, 4C, but understand, for example, that some hair is more porous, some hair is less porous. If you're making a product based on yourself, is it only going to work on your hair type? Is it going to work on a variety of hair types? Have you tested it out on a variety of people? So it's the research and development stages, it's really extensive and it does take a long time, but there are no shortcuts to it. If you've been making the product already at home and it's something that you do as a hobby, you've already cut out that stage a little bit because you know you already have that product and it's just a way of developing it and getting out to market. So you're at a bit of an advantage. Does that answer your question? I went on for a little bit there.
No, it was very good. But Nibi, how can people learn like this information, right? Because I think, say I wanted to try something, my hair does shrink up kind of, when it's humid outside, but how would I even know what types of products could combat that issue? Or how do I do the research on the products? Are there any places that you recommend that people can go to learn more? Or what does a good kind of research and development process look like?
Okay, well, it sort of depends, because if we're talking about, for example, if we're talking about having a mass scale product, that is very different from if we're talking about somebody who doesn't have that much money but wants to start a small business. So it sort of depends. If you've got lots of money to spend and we're talking about developing mass scale product, I would actually recommend talking to a chemist. You can get this information, from a chemist. If we're just talking about somebody who has maybe a little bit of money to spend and wants to start a natural hair brand, which is basically what I think is what most people would be interested in finding out. You just need to do that research online. There are courses that you can do. And first of all, I think that it's an important thing to find, to identify why you want to bring this product to market. So is it that you think that natural hair products bring in a lot of money, so you want to get a chunk of that business? Or is it that you already enjoy making products? If you already enjoy making products, you make products for yourself. Maybe you can't find anything on the market that you like that much. Maybe you found things that you like, but you think they're too expensive and you think that you can do them cheaper. Or maybe you think that there's something that hasn't been done and that you can bring this to the market, and then you've been working on this yourself. This comes from a passion, and in the course of that passion, you probably already have found out, discovered, made things for yourself and discovered what works and what doesn't. But then there are several books that teach you about the properties of products. There's several, even on our blog as well. We've got some information on the properties of the different products, and I explain why I use certain products with certain ingredients when I'm in Nigeria, which are different to what I'd use when I'm in England, because when I'm here, products that products like glycerin, for example, aloe vera, draw humidity from the air, and when you're doing that, it causes frizz. So I know that if I want to have a twist out or a braid out, I'm not going to use a product that contains those ingredients. So so these are things that you learn just by doing the research. There's so many, just quick Google searches. There's so many places where you can start off and get the basic information. But then if you're at the stage where you're having to start this process right from the beginning, you don't know anything about products, you don't know anything about natural hair, you just want to get into it because you think it's a lucrative game. It might not be as successful unless you become passionate about it along the way. It might not be as successful if it's something that you're just doing just because you think it's something that's going to be lucrative, rather than because you have a passion for it and you want to develop it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. So maybe quick one though. You mentioned that there are some online resources, and you mentioned your website has information about different places to do research about different products and how they interact with our hair. Are there any other resources that you can share, other websites that you've used along your journey to learn more?
Yes, there are. For example, there's a book called The Science of Black Hair that has a lot of information on just a lot of scientific information as well on just looking after natural hair, the kind of products and ingredients to use, just how to treat and handle your hair. And I know a couple of people in Nigeria sell it. We had a couple of copies, but we don't really anymore, but I know that you can do it. It's called The Science of Black Hair. There's a blog called The Natural Haven. She doesn't post so much anymore, but she was a scientist, and she gave a lot of information on hair and products backed by science. So these are things, there's several forums online as well about people who make their own products and mix their own products. Nothing's springing to mind at the moment, but something that I could always send through at a later date. But there are people who discuss, there's several forums of mixologists who discuss how they mix their own products, what ingredients they use, where to get things from. Because even with, for example, we have a lot of good ingredients in Nigeria. We've got, shea butters, coconut oil, and things like that. But there's certain things that are required in products that you can't really get in Nigeria. So, for example, your preservatives, which every product should have, and you have some that are not that toxic. You can use, for example, Optifen, but you can't get that here as far as I know. Things that you need to emulsify the different ingredients. So if you have an oil-based ingredient and you have a water-based ingredient, they're not going to mix in a product. You need something to emulsify them. And there are very few that you can get here in Nigeria. So you just need to go online, do a search, you know what you're looking for, and you're able to find the resources that way. We can, if you want me to put together a directory or something, that's something I can do for you later. But I haven't to hand.
Yes, that would be great. And I think that brings us along to our next question. So Stephanie asked specifically about when you create products, how do you preserve them and lengthen their lifespan without using harsh chemicals, or if you still want to keep them as natural or organic as possible? So you mentioned some options, but what advice would you give to individuals who are trying to test out kind of what the shelf life of their products will be and how to make products last longer?
Yeah, if you're not working with a chemist, the only thing you can do to test that out is just time. So you can make a certain number of control products and keep them, keep one just out in a cool, dry place. You can keep one in a fridge. You can keep one in a steamy bathroom, and you have them there you have to keep them and see how long they last. So 6 months, a year, 2 years. And the only way, that's the way, if you're doing this at home, and you're not doing this along with the help of a chemist, that's really the only way that you can see, and you have to observe and see how long it's going to take. In terms of preservatives, people use things like citric acid, they use things like Optifen, and again, you just have to, in terms of where you can get them, I'm not sure of any sources in Nigeria that sell those. I'm not sure, but a Google search will confirm that. And that's just something that you have to order, but you do need to preserve your product. You can't have mold growing in your product. You can't sell something to somebody and then they use it once or they open it once, and the next time they look at it, it's covered in mold. It's unhygienic. It's not pleasant, and that will prevent a lot of your future sales. So that's something that you really have to look into.
Great. So the next area that we wanted to talk more about was around like sourcing for your ingredients and the packaging. And as you mentioned, some of the products are not available in different African markets, so you have to find it abroad. So what advice would you give Nibi around sourcing for ingredients? And especially when you're starting out, it can be hard because you can't afford large quantities of these items. So do you have any advice on how to find ingredients and then also to find quality packaging for your products as well?
Yeah. Well, in terms of ingredients, they, for example, if you make simpler products with less ingredients, you can find most of the ingredients. If you look at, for example, a company like L'Occitane, based in, well, it's French, but based in the UK, they sell like tiny jars of just shea butter for ridiculous amounts of prices, ridiculous amounts of money, and they've because they position themselves as a luxury brand, they're able to do that. But these are all ingredients that you can easily get in Nigeria. The only thing I'd say is that if you're working with ingredients, you have to just be very careful of the source. For example, if you're getting shea butter, don't just go and get it in a local market, because you don't know if how clean it's going to be. I know people have found all sorts of things in shea butter they've got on the market. If you look up the Global Shea Alliance, there's several people. It's mainly made up of African-based companies, and that you can find a lot of people who supply you with good quality, hygienic shea butter. A lot of things in terms of getting sources for a lot of your oils and everything, it comes most of the time just from word of mouth. You're not going to find that information from Googling. You just need to get in there, get on the streets, get in the markets, talk to people, and make contacts that way. For things like packaging, I know that a number of plastics factories in Nigeria, but they tend to want you to get things in the thousands. But then there's certain areas and there's certain markets, for example, in Aswani market or in Ojota or Gudu, you can get, there are several companies that sell plastics in large quantities. I mean, you can get jars for as low as 20 naira for a jar, or a bag of maybe 1,000 jars for about 1.15 or something. So you can, but you just need to do, it's a lot of footwork, a lot of walking around, a lot of asking people, a lot of networking. So going to events, meeting with people who might make products, who might not be that willing to give you the information, admittedly, but it just takes it's a lot of footwork as well. But it is possible to get a lot of ingredients. I don't think it is possible to get 100% of the ingredients in Nigeria at the moment, or originating from Nigeria or from most African countries. But then you can probably get up to about 95 of the ingredients. And then if you're starting out and you keep your products quite simple, so you keep it with fewer ingredients, then that just makes it easier to source your products from here, rather than trying to make something really complicated with a lot of ingredient names that you don't recognize, and then you have to go and get from somewhere else.
Now, I know another issue is, say you found your products, you've done your testing, then the next question is regulation. And I think regulation is a big issue for startups and entrepreneurs, but especially when it comes to health and beauty, that's particularly sensitive because it's going on people's skin, it's going on people's hair, and you don't want a situation that could be potentially, dangerous or harmful. So what experience have you had, or what recommendations would you give to entrepreneurs who are trying to get approval from their government body? So in Nigeria, but in countries across Africa and the diaspora, there's some kind of regulatory body that manages, hair and beauty products.
Yeah. Well, in Nigeria especially, it's notoriously tough. It's through NAFDAC, and it's notoriously tough. And that's something that you have to I mean, a lot of the restrictions actually would put off small batch manufacturers, because you do have to have factories of a certain size. Factories has to be split into different rooms and things like that. So that's something that you have to consider, and I think you have to look into it straight away. But I think that while you're doing that, you can get NAFDAC regulation from the NAFDAC website, but you have to just ensure that what you're doing is in line with what you're going to be required, what's going to be required from them. The process takes a long time. It takes years, and most people who are working in are doing small batch productions won't even have the scale that will enable them to get NAFDAC registration at this stage. But then I think that in terms of aligning yourself from the beginning, it's just something to get into the habit of. So your labeling should follow the regulations, include all the ingredients, etc. And then in terms of what you can do, just being at home, somebody's making products. For example, a lot of really great products started in somebody's kitchen. And for somebody who wants to do that, it doesn't. You still need to take steps to ensure that the product you're creating and the product you're going to be putting out is hygienic. So you need to ensure, for example, if you're working in your kitchen, your surfaces are, your surfaces are completely clean. We rub down our surfaces with alcohol. Your hands are clean. Your hair is tied back. Don't mix equipment that you're using to make products with equipment that you use for food. Don't, avoid the use of, for example, ensure your jars are disinfected. So if you're using glass, you can boil them. If you're using plastic, you can use certain sterilizing fluids like Milton. And so you just ensure that right from the beginning, you're already in the habit of aligning yourself with whatever, with, when you get to the stage where you're going to be inspected and everything, you're already in that habit of aligning yourself with that. And also even just for your own your own reputation, if you make products and customers are finding all sorts of things in it, they're not going to buy from you again. So it is really important that you have those standards in-house, even without any kind of regulatory body. If you're planning to eventually take your product global, you're going to also have to follow the rules of whatever country you're planning on selling in. For example, in the UK and the EU, they've got these EU labeling laws, which are also very, very strict. It's quite hard. Even a lot of American companies are finding it hard to break into that. And then in the States, they've got the FDA regulations as well. So whatever market you're looking to break into, you need to do the research for that market. But this would take an entire webinar to go into detail on this. I think it's just being aware that you align yourself right from the beginning in terms of your hygiene standards.
Okay, I hope you guys heard that. Wash your hands before you sell me. Please. Okay, say that you tested your products, you have your packaging set, and you're ready to start kind of introducing it to the market. Figuring out the best price can be very challenging for new entrepreneurs, regardless of the industry that you're in. And in a competitive market with hair and beauty, figuring out the appropriate price can be quite challenging. Nibi, what kind of advice would you give for new entrepreneurs who are trying to figure out how to position their product in the market and what price points to look at?
Yeah, okay, well, first of all, you can use other products that are already on the market as a guide. First, you have to decide what kind of product you're going to do. Are you trying to go for a mass market product? Are you trying to go for a niche product? When I say niche product, I mean somebody who said, oh, I'm creating specifically a natural hair product. If you do that, you know that a lot of your customers are going to be quite discerning and quite educated in terms of ingredients. They're not going to want fillers like mineral oil or silicones in their product, which also makes your costs a bit more expensive. But at the same time, if you're doing that, you can position it as a bit more of a luxury. I think that the important thing, especially if you're starting off in a small batch, so if, for example, you only have enough money to start off making 24 of one product at a time, and you're trying to sell that to reinvest that money because you don't have any additional investment to grow your company and you need to make that money. That means that the products you sell are going to have to make a profit. So it means that, so when you look at your pricing, you have to look at what is available in the market, but you can't price yourself out. You can't charge such a low price. If you see someone who produces, who's been in business for a long time, selling their products at, for example, 1,500 for a jar of something, and you feel it's similar to yours, you can't really charge much less than that if your costs are also 1,500 naira. You can't charge that because you're not going to make any profit, and you're not going to be able to reinvest that into or grow that into your business unless you have, the funding coming in from somewhere else. So I think it's important to look at both. How are you covering your costs, making sure that you are covering your costs, and then at the same time when you're charging your price, when you're setting the price, also just make sure that it's commensurate with what people are selling. So if everybody's selling at 1.5 and your costs are quite high, you might be able to sell at a little bit, maybe a couple of 100 naira above that. And if you're pushing your product as a niche product, but you probably wouldn't be able to sell for double that price, people wouldn't buy. So it's just a fine balance of figuring out, making sure you cover your costs, make sure you make that little extra bit so you can reinvest and still make more product, and then and not charging too high and not pricing yourself out of the market.
Now, Nibi, I know the Kinky Apothecary carries a wide range of products. Some are mass market, some are kind of like basics or fundamentals, so they're almost like commodities of sorts, and then some are more luxury products. So say I wanted to start a company and I said, you know what, this is going to be a luxury product. I'm using the best of the best ingredients. The packaging looks correct, everything. How would you go about positioning that to consumers, right? How do you make sure the consumers also view it as a luxury product? So if you are charging more than what other competitors are charging, your customers are seeing that, and retailers feel comfortable stocking it and selling it at that higher price point.
Well, if you're going to do that, first of all, your product better work. So you better have a good product that people, once they try it, will buy it. You need to, if you're going to position yourself as a luxury product, you're going to have to align yourself with retailers who have that same vision. So you have to go with retailers who also sell other luxury brands, or and such a retailer is not. You also have to be selective about who stocks it. So if you're positioning yourself as a luxury brand, it can't be available everywhere, because somebody, let's pick, for example, Alara. I don't think they sell beauty products yet, but if they were going to, and I'd imagine they'd be quite high quality, they wouldn't stock something that you could just go down to a local market and get the same thing at. So you have to be selective about who you align with, who sells. If you align with a retailer who's already known for luxury products or known as a luxury brand, that would help. If you're doing something that you want to be perceived as luxury or exclusive, you could also align yourself with maybe find a blogger who's a beauty blogger or a natural hair blogger who also has quite a good following, but is also seen as somebody who aligns themselves with exclusive or luxury brands, and then maybe send them a product, work out a deal with them, get them to publicize your product and stuff and that. But back to what I said, the product has to work, so they have to be able to convince people that it does work, because it does. So if you have the best packaging and you've aligned yourself with the best people, and then somebody tries your product and everyone tries it and they don't think it's good, it's not going to be convincing. So that is the most important thing.
Okay, that is great, Nibi. So what happens after after you develop your costing, your pricing? It's really about the branding and the differentiation and sorts. And I feel like a lot of companies are going for especially if it's a natural product, they're going for the African themed content and everything like that. But what advice would you give around how do you make sure your products stand out? If you want to have a shea butter product, you really love shea butter, that's what you're going for, how can your shea butter look different or be different than all the other people doing shea butter? And how do you make sure that, and this is actually a question that we got from Shadia as well. She said, well, everyone's learning how to make their own products. Everyone's going to go buy things. So what do you do that's different when someone can just make something in their house and can whip it up and share it on YouTube just the same as you can? Maybe you have to help us because we don't want to just create something like everyone else.
To be honest, that's one thing that I was going to say. Everybody's always going for shea butter, and there's so many, including us, we're guilty of that as well. But then I would love to see some products that are not shea butter based, there's so many other amazing oils. There's baobab oil. There's so many things. There's people could look into what else they can base a product on. That's one thing. So if you're using different products that different ingredients, to what everyone else is using, that's already a step in the right direction. Even if you are going to carry on using shea butter, what makes your product different? Does it do something different that all the others do? There are 100 different butters on the market, but for example, not to toot our own horn that much, but for example, we produce a product the only one that we make is called the Whip Batter. It's a shea butter based product, but everyone who tries it, I'd say about 95% of the reviews we get are positive and people like it. So we know that it is different to other shea butter based products. It's a bit lighter because of what else it's combined with. And just based on that, I know that that's the only product probably that we'll make going forward that has shea butter, because I just feel that there's so many. It's hard to differentiate yourself if you're using the same ingredients. So yeah, look for several different ingredients or whatever you can use. That's the first thing. Secondly, if you are going to carry on with the same ingredients that everybody's doing, you've got to differentiate yourself or just make yourself stand out in other ways. So one thing you can do is just build a story and sell that story. So you have a background to why you have this product or why this product works, why people should use your product. And if people have a story that they can identify with, and it might help, it would convince them a bit more to look at your product, to try it out. It might even convince them that it works, even if it doesn't. So if you have a convincing enough story, and I've seen that with products time and time again, they're not particularly great products, but because they have this whole ethos, they have this brand they've built up around a story about how they started, people are convinced, and they've become really successful as a result. Packaging is something that I think is really important. If, for example, even for us as a retailer, we've got our image, and people expect a certain standard from us and the products that we stock. So when we have our product, our shelves, and we have like Shea Moisture and Anita Grant, if we were to have like just jars with some products spilling over with a label that wasn't that inviting, that we wouldn't be able to sell that product. So when you're looking at your branding, you look at your packaging. Your packaging, even if it's not expensive, even if your jars are not expensive, you can get your labels, get some really nice labels done, work with a graphic designer, even if you don't have the funds to work with a real professional. You can find someone creative, look in your network. You might have a friend who's a graphic design student. You might even have to learn design yourself to do certain things, and develop something or a label or something that draws people in. Sell your story through that label as well. What does your product do that is so amazing that that should make people want to get it? Why would people see your product and see another product and choose yours? So you just sell that story through your branding, through your labeling, through your whole ethos. You can do that on a simple website. You don't even have to start with the website. You can start with a blog. There's certain blogs, for example, WordPress, that you can customize, have a nice design on. You can have, even if it's a simple one-page thing, and it's selling the story of your brand, it's making people want to find out more, want to test out your thing, your product. And then when you have all of this, the most important thing is you need to get it out to people. So people need to know about it. People need to know it's there. So that's where the marketing comes in. So you have to, and there's so many different ways. Most people, if you're starting a product line on a shoestring, you're not going to have a huge marketing budget. So there are just certain things that you can't underestimate. One is social media, especially Instagram. if you're able to sell your story through an interesting Instagram with good content, you're interacting with other people, that's a way to grow awareness in your product, to get it out there to people. You might even have to consider sending out free samples to people with a good enough following who can talk about your product and just create a buzz. Another thing is to not underestimate the power of your own network. So your friends, your family, somebody you added on Facebook after you met them once, or someone you went to school with, your grandma. Everybody needs to know. Everybody you know should know about your product, and they're the ones who talk about it to other people. Your personal, for example, if you have a newsletter, your newsletter should start off, your newsletter base should be your friends, so your email contact list. So even people you don't think would be interested in it, because they might always know someone. And so getting the name of getting your product out there, getting awareness about your product out there are just ways that people might consider you in relation to all the other hundreds of products that might be out there. So your packaging, your story, the image you're putting out, and then just people knowing about you in general.
Great. So Nibi, what if I have a product that I want to be stocked on the Kinky Apothecary, right? Mm-hmm. What is it that you want to see from a brand in order to distribute it? Because for some people, online will be key, and that's where you have to build up your own individual supporter base, build up customers, and drive traffic towards your website, or maybe you want to stock on an e-commerce platform. But if you want to be stocked in a store and for a retailer, kind of what does it take to get your products on the shelves with them, maybe?
Yeah, again, it's what I meant. I mean, different people have different standards of who they'll stock. For me, speaking from my personal experience, it's hard to stock products that don't already have a bit of a buzz around them, because you end up with this huge capital outlay, and then you can't sell the products or you're doing the work to market the product for the brand. So you need to have generated some sort of buzz for the product, and that will get them interested. And if a retailer knows that when they stock your product, they're going to have people lining up to come and buy them, or they're going to have people who've already heard about it through your Instagram and they've been waiting for you to launch it, and they're going to come in and buy from them. That's one thing. Secondly, again, what I was saying, your products have to look nice. And I've made this mistake in the past. We had a graphic designer that I'd been working with on other marketing things, so our flyers and our banners, and he did them all really well. But when it came to our label, he hadn't had experience in doing product labels before, but because he'd done such a good job on the other things, we moved ahead with him to print out product labels. And then when they came out and the oil went on them, they all got restained, so they weren't pleasant to look at. A product like that on a shelf with something that's been well developed is not going to sell. It's not going to look good, and retailers are not really going to want to stock that. So you have to make sure, again, your packaging, your branding is good. And things that, and then for if you want to stock with a retailer, obviously you're going to have a retail price. So you're going to have to a wholesale price. So you're going to have to be able to offer them a lower price so that they can sell and also make a cut from selling your product as well. So if your product is really good, also another thing is you might be able to align yourself with a retail. We don't have them so much here in Nigeria, but maybe in other African countries they might, or in other countries, retail chains. We don't really have many. But if you worked with, for example, if you had a contact with the ShopRite, for example, I don't know if they're interested in selling natural hair products, and you worked it out that they were exclusive. You know that they have a good reach, and you worked out so that they exclusively stock your products, and that people can't get your products from anywhere else, so you know that they're driving traffic into there. That's another thing that might work. So if you work with a successful brand who's interested in selling your product on the basis that only they will be able to sell it, that's another way that you could work with to try and get them to stock.
Great. Now, Nibi, we got a question around kind of marketing and distribution when it comes to exhibition. And this comes from Tonka Bele. And she said, do you think it's important to attend fairs or exhibitions to sell your products when you're already selling them online or in a store? Kind of, are you actually able to generate enough revenue to cover the cost of the stand paid for? And what are some things to think about when you're evaluating whether or not doing a physical stand would be good for your business?
Okay, well, in terms of doing these stores, because we've been in business for 6 years and we still attend a lot of fairs and things like that. But the reason that we do that is, I think there are 22 million people in Lagos. 22 million people haven't heard about the Kinky Apothecary. So even if I have my own customers, I have my website and I sell from wherever I'm selling for, there's still people out there who I could reach who haven't heard about the product. And so when you do these fairs, it's more of a marketing exercise than a sales exercise. Now I'd say maybe because people have heard about us a bit more, we are more likely to, we do sell a lot more. But in the beginning, it was more of a marketing exercise. We didn't sell enough to cover the cost of the stand back in the day. But then we were able to get people to know about the product. People could see the product. Sometimes we'd have samples so people could test them out. And that was just a way of building our customer base. We'd collect customer details in our guest book and everything, add them to our mailing list. And so that was just a way of building our customer base. And so as long as for these events, as long as you see them more as a marketing thing and don't try and make your money back, I think that they're quite useful. In terms of evaluating them, I don't do just any fairs. So you have to make sure it's something that's well known. You have to make sure that there are people who are going to be coming through the doors and there are people who are going to be interested in your product. So I wouldn't, for example, go to and try and sell at a car showroom event, because I know that the people coming in would not necessarily be interested in hair and beauty. So you just have to evaluate how well known the event is, what other vendors are selling there, so you know what kind of a crowd is coming in, and just if they've done the fair before, how many people they had last time, just try and gauge how successful it's going to be. And obviously the more people who come, the more successful it is for you.
And are there any questions that you'd recommend that people ask to get that information? Because sometimes maybe event hosts don't have that kind of data, but what are the critical questions that you as a potential vendor should ask to make sure it's going to be a good event for your products?
You can just ask them if they've done the event before. So the last time they did it, how many people can they estimate how many people came? You can find out who the vendors were at the last event. You can talk to those vendors and just see how it went for them. Did you get many people at your stand? Did many people buy things? You can ask if they had any pictures. In the day of social media, people would have put pictures on Instagram. You can gauge from Instagram pictures if an event was quite successful. Well, I know that people can crop and do small corners and things like that, but you can still kind of gauge how, if there was a bit of traffic, people might not have spent that much on the day. But we've had several events where people have come and just taken a flyer and just and signed up for our guest book, and then 2 weeks later they've placed an order. So I don't know, people might not have the money at the time, but just as long as it's somewhere where there's foot traffic, and if there's a lot of traffic, a fraction of that will end up being your customers at some point, as long as you're able to reach them and have something that that they would like.
Got it. So I think the last point, kind of the last major point is, operations and logistics. You want to make sure that you're creating an efficient process so that it's not just you do it once and then it's over, or you're not learning and improving. So what tips can you share about operations and how to develop a process that allows the business to be sustainable and, grow, hopefully quite large and take over the world?
Well, yeah, I'm still trying for that too. So, but well, as I said at the beginning, when it was just me, now I actually have a team. But right at the beginning, it was just I wasn't that organized, and my logistics were shoddy. There's no question about it. I missed a lot of orders from email orders. I missed a lot of phone calls. So it's just about being organized and just knowing that you're focusing on it at a certain time. So for example, if you have a full-time job and you have and you know that you have this on the side, again, as I was saying, you just deal with it, deal through email. So you know that at a certain time of the day, you're going to check your emails, you're going to check for the orders, and you're going to process them, you know, in the evenings. But then your customers need to be aware that you're not going to be there full time to answer, you know, answer calls, answer questions, but that you will eventually get back to them in emails. When you're still starting off small as well, you probably you can't just ship. If you're getting an order, maybe you probably not even getting orders every day. So you have certain days. When I first started, I'd ship on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So any orders that came in until Tuesday were all shipped on Tuesday, and then etc. So people didn't get things straight away. Now that we have a bit more of a seamless operation, we ship every day, and we have our offices open 9 to 5 pretty much every day. So that makes it a bit different. But when you're smaller and just starting out, you need to set in place processes that work for you. So you need to just walk through the steps and just imagine what would it be like if you were the customer placing an order with your own business. So if, you know, how do they place the order? Are they doing it on the website? And if that's on the website, how are you collecting the money? Are they doing a bank transfer? Do you have GT Pay or something set up? Are you doing cash on delivery, which is something that, again, I don't know if I would recommend that, because there's a huge opportunity for you to spend the resources delivering something and then the person isn't there, or it was a hoax and the person doesn't collect. You can't collect your money, and then you waste money sending it. So you need to identify which is the best method for you to collect money. You need to work with logistics partners who are good. So either you find a good shipping, a good delivery courier person, and we've been through several, and we've been through bad ones as well. And we've had really bad experiences, and now we've got a partner that we work with that's a lot better. But then you have to go through that process and find a logistics partner who can take care of your shipping, and you know that they're trustworthy and the customer is going to get something. You need to know, again, not only just the packaging, but then just how are you getting the products to somebody? If you're selling something in a bottle, things spill sometimes. How are you packaging them to ensure that this doesn't happen? Are you sure that your products are not going to go and just be sitting in some hot warehouse somewhere and everything's not going to melt? So these are things you need to look into. If you feel that you can't handle that logistical side of things, it might be worth looking into like opening a shop front with somebody else who can handle your logistics. So if you open a shop front on, for example, Conga, and then you just get when the orders come in, you get them to their distribution center, they send them out for you, they sort out the money, all that issue with the cash and delivery or the wallet, they're able to do that for you. So that's something that's worth looking at. You might not be able to handle that all yourself. When you grow a little bit, you might be able to get maybe a staff member to answer the phone, answer emails and things like that for you. A very important thing though is customer service, and I just think that we don't focus so much on that in Nigeria, and it's just a bit of, I think it's an issue. People base their purchasing choices on the experiences they've had. So if you have a business owner who seems blasé about the product, doesn't really understand what they're selling, or they're not that bothered about how the customer feels, it's going to put people off. So, just accept the things that mistakes are going to happen. Products are going to spill, packages might not get there and things like that, but you have to just always find a way to fix it and make it right. And just imagine you're that customer, and how would you want to be treated in that situation? If something goes wrong, you communicate with the customer, so you just don't leave them hanging, don't leave them not knowing what's going on. And if something bad has happened to a product, you just try and find a way to make it up to them. Because I think that happens a bit too much here, especially where you order something and there's a problem with it, and then they just leave you. They don't find any way to make it up to you. So I think those are just things to look at. And then don't offer something that you can't deliver. So if you know that you're going to have issues with shipping things out, you haven't figured out your shipping process and things like that, don't offer that. Get your product stocked at a retailer rather than selling through a website if you know you're going to have that issue, and try not to oversell yourself in terms of what you can offer your customer.
Got it. That's all really, really, really valuable advice. So we just have some quick questions before we close out. Thankfully, some wonderful participants from our YouTube page. So Bimbola Elizabeth wanted to know, what was the specific name or the place in Ojota that has like the plastic for packaging? Maybe was there a place that you can refer her to?
Yeah, there's actually a street, and I'm trying to remember what it's called. Just one second. Yeah, it's called Wadebo Street, and it's off the Ogudu Ojota Road, and there are lots of different plastic selling companies, so you can just go in and haggle with them. There are quite a number of them there.
Perfect. Now, Cynthia Antwi wants to know, how did you handle importation issues for the other chemicals that kind of should be used in products?
Yeah, that's another issue. We went through a number of shippers, and now we kind of have one that's, and we have our clearing agent at the port, but it's it was quite a process. For smaller items, you can use people like Jan Tigidi. There's several sort of messenger services who bring things in from abroad and they clear it for you. So if you're not bringing in huge container loads, you can work with them. So that's the option. There's several options of people who deliver things. Gosh, my mind has just gone blank now, but there's a company in the UK and there's one called Jantigudi, and then in the States, there are several who ship smaller amounts. And also some companies also ship globally, like Amazon ships to Nigeria. It takes a while, but it does. And then these things are cleared. I don't know, they work with agents who clear things at the port.
Another question is, what is the actual color of shea butter and coconut oil? What is it actually supposed to look like when you buy it from a producer? And it's supposed to be like the natural one.
Well, all the experience, because from my research, I've been told shea butter should either be white or yellow, but all the suppliers that I have had have been yellow. I used to think that white meant it had been processed, but apparently it's not. Apparently you can get naturally occurring white shea butter. I haven't seen it yet. But I think the important thing to note is the smell. So if it's been refined or whatever, it won't have that strong smell. If it's unrefined, you will be able to, it's unmistakable, the smell of shea butter. So that coconut oil, see, it's different. So in the UK, for example, if you get it in a colder climate, it's white and solid. And then it melts and it's like a brownish oil. So when you get it in Nigeria, it tends to be a brown oil. And again, it smells like coconut. So you should be able to identify it from the smell and identify that it's natural and not processed, just from how it smells.
Yeah, okay. And then the last one from our audience is, were there any major struggles that you encountered when you were starting rethinking this whole thing? And how did you overcome or manage those struggles?
Well, I haven't overcome them because these struggles come all the time, and literally if you decide to be an entrepreneur, you will find yourself cursing your life every day and wondering why didn't you just go back to 9 to 5? Because at the end of the day, you're the only person, especially if you don't have investors, you are the sole owner of your business. You're the only person who cares about it. Even if there are people helping you out with this business, at the end of the day, it's your baby. Nobody's going to lose sleep over it. If you hire somebody to do something, they're going to leave and get another job, but that's your investment. That's everything that's gone into it. So it's really only you that carries this burden. And it can be really, really stressful. And I think even as recently as last week, I was complaining to somebody about how I just wanted to quit and go back to London and get a 9 to 5. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that ever ends, but you just have to have your goal in mind. I mean, before you start anything off, you should have a sort of strategy, even if it's a broad outline of a strategy. And that changes all the time. Your plans change, but at least if you have that as a reference point to go back and focus on. And so if things get a bit difficult, you can go back and look at it and just think, okay, why am I doing this? You can figure out what the reasons your reasons for doing it. You can figure out how to change things if they're not working at the time. And you just put that work, and then eventually, even if you put that work in, eventually if you've gone to raise finance, that work, becomes your sweat equity. Nobody else has done Kinky Apothecary from 6 years ago to now. So if anyone wanted to come and take it over, I'm integral to the business. And that's just something that's just come over me having to put my blood, sweat and tears into it. And I think it's the same for any business. And it's really just important to remember that going forward as well. It's something that you've created. It's unique to, it's unique to you, and it's just worth it in the end, I think. I hope. I'll find out.
Wonderful. Okay, and then my last question for you, Nibi, is if someone's interested in learning more about the Kinky Apothecary and they're interested in, hopefully getting their products stocked there, or just learning more about natural hair care, how can they get in touch with you and how can they follow the great work that you're doing?
Okay, well, we've got a website, which is www.thekinkyapothecary.com. I don't know if I need to spell apothecary, but I know that it's always an issue. We're on all, they can email us at info@thekinkyapothecary.com. And then we're on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest and Tumblr, not so much, but we are, as at Kinky Apothecary. So no the in our social media, but there's a the in the website. And we generally get round eventually to responding to pretty much all the emails that we get and comments and direct messages. It can take a while sometimes, but we do eventually do that. So yeah, shoot us a message and let me know you watch this as well, so I know I know who how many people we spoke to, or if there was anyone, or if I'm just talking to Afua right now. But, yeah.
No, there are people watching. There's lots of comments and people are really grateful. So thank you so much, Nibi. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your insights. To everyone on the other side of the screen, thank you. We like to say here that friends that learn together, earn together. So don't keep all this knowledge to yourself. Make sure you share the link. You can still watch this video, this webinar after we finish. Let your friends know about She Leads Africa. And encourage them to visit our website at sheleadsafrica.org and join our community. Make sure you follow us on all our social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, just at She Leads Africa. And definitely go and check out the kinkyapothecary.com. Get some products, start testing it out, and go and build an amazing business. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye.